Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 6 of the anime series Grimgar, Fantasy and Ash. And as much into it as I can get. This was a largely predictable episode, and it's kind of funny because one of the things I've seen time and time again with people who are really unabashedly fanning over this particular series, they get kind of derogatory with anyone who makes comparisons between it and Sword Art Online. And I find that funny. SAO, to me, I largely enjoyed that series for what it was. It was definitely a series with inherent problems, and there were wonky aspects of the story. But it was, the characters were memorable characters. They all had personality. They all stood out for one reason or another, at least the main cast of characters. And it's one of those things where I can understand people having a love-hate thing with it, a take it or leave it kind of framework. I take some of it, I leave some of it. I'm not an unabashed SAO fan, but I am a fan of the series for what it's worth, especially the GGO arc in SAO 2. Thoroughly loved the hell out of that to pieces. And, but it's like I say, I can look at it objectively and say, well, these are the problems this series has. And so I understand when people, who may not particularly care for that series and love this particular series, they might look upon people making those comparisons as like, you don't get it. There's a level of taking it in the derogatorily that, these comparisons are made. And I'm just kind of coming at this objectively. Again, as I've said before, I have no stake in dismantling this series or hurting anyone's feelings, about saying what problems I have with it. But I thought it was interesting and kind of funny that, for the most part, the melodrama of this episode and sort of the character design of Mary, who was largely the focus of it, the blue and the white motif, the blue hair and everything, coinciding with this melodrama and the way it was handled, thoroughly reminded me for some reason of an early season 1 SAO episode. I'm not sure which episode it was, but the idea of losing your party and becoming very internal and dispassionate, to people around you and everything, for feeling that loss and suffering that loss. All of these things I just found highly predictable and unmoving, really. For that reason, it's like there were aspects of the Mary character I really wish we had gone more into, and it was a direction that I was actually hopeful they were going in, where you had Haruhiro breaking down the walls of communication. He's keeping at it. He doesn't want to give up on her. And I felt like as long as he was trying to make the headway, as long as he was getting the group involved and sort of, falling into that leadership role, with his words to Big Moose, whatever his name is, who doesn't have the helmet, and, the idea of, hey, get yourself a helmet, being supportive and constructive. We see these are things that are garnering, Mary's attention. And I liked that. I really liked that idea. And, then they kind of just fall back on laziness, and they got to go talk to people who knew her because they saw her talking to these people in the tavern, and she didn't want to, hang out with them or anything like that. She doesn't want to be interpersonal because of her losses. We get it. It makes sense. Within the confines of the series, it makes sense. She is the embodiment of consequences, and that should have been more interesting to me. I think it would have been a lot more interesting if they hadn't had to sort of, go around her and really risk breaking, sort of the simpatico they want to make there, the friendship they want to make there. Well, how is she going to trust them now? They're going behind her back and talking to other people about her. At least that would unnerve me, and that would irk me, if I were in her position. And to me, it really deflated the interpersonal connectivity that they could have had, that they were working toward, and they were becoming successful. I mean, there's that point where, he says goodbye to her, and she's like, well, I'll see you, ... and he believes she would have said, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you next time. She's looking forward to seeing them again. And that was the gist of it that I got as well. But of course, then they cop out and they go to talk to these other people because she is so internal. It's like, for a series that has such slow pacing and really takes a snail's pace to get anywhere, to suddenly cut corners and have the whole bulk of this main party go and talk to other people behind her back. What? Why? And, you know, starting off this episode once again with having to cover the consequences of, you know, the whole mistaken hilarity, I guess what they were trying to go for as cutesy and hilarious and funny, with Yume and Haruhiro, you know, being together on the ground and looking like something else. Like, we had to start the episode with the consequences of that? Like, why couldn't they just have done that in the last episode? A lot of these so-called cliffhangers in this series could have just come to a culmination, been dealt with in the previous episode, and then we could have started fresh. The holdovers from episode to episode are all the wrong ones, are all the stupid ones. Like, you know, as I said, going back, I've harped on this a couple of times now. If you've been following my coverage of this series, love it or hate it, you know, like the whole idea of Ranta trying to get in the bathhouse, and then the next episode begins with reprimanding him and the rest of the guys who weren't even involved, and it's like, why? Just, you couldn't have had that at the end of the previous episode? Am I the only one? Am I the only one with these issues? Like, I feel like I'm the only one on the precipice here, with every one of these, you know, fanboys and fangirls of this series ready to push me off the edge. Because, like, oh, man. And, you know, that isn't to say, once again, this episode had certain elements that I enjoyed. Most notably, the spirit of Minato visiting Haruhiro, you know, that little conversation between them. And I felt we were already ready by the end of the previous episode for him to try to now fill the leadership role of this party. I thought we were already there. I thought he'd already kind of figured that out, and it just elongated the process for me of, let's get there. You know, like, it's only now after he's had this sort of mental confrontation with Minato, answering to him his qualm about, well, what did he mean? You know, I'm counting on you and all that kind of stuff. Like, I thought we'd figured this out already, but all right, Haruhiro is a little slow to the uptake. He hasn't quite gotten there yet. And so it was a very poignant scene. I was actually really moved by that scene between them. You know, like, it was one of those things where if you've suffered losses in your life, you contemplate and you go through, you know, what would my mom or dad have wanted for me, you know, in the future of my life, to keep living, to keep making the best possible choices, you know, in having lost them and everything like that. That's something I have faced consequently, you know, in my life. So every decision I have to make, sometimes I think, you know, what would they want for me? And, you know, most notably, they'd want me to be happy with whatever choices I make. And, you know, second to that I'm not doing anything destructive or harmful and those kinds of things. And so, in a large part, you know, Haru is facing that internally. I almost would have liked it even more, because this is a fantasy environment, if this was actually something legitimate, kind of like the Force Ghost aesthetic in the Star Wars films and everything, where, you know, this was actually the spirit of Minato somehow, you know, communicating with Haruhiro, rather than necessarily being a product of his mind and his imagination and assuming and all that kind of stuff, making those assumptions. But yeah, largely, this is the first episode of this series where I didn't feel overwhelmingly compelled to talk about it. I mean, even when the series is bad, you know, Everything Becomes F, The Perfect Insider, was brain-numbing garbage. And I still found a means to keep up with it all the way to the end. I still wanted to get through all the way to the end. And with this episode, it just, there wasn't even anything to really grasp onto for me, to the point where I have any hope of you know, I'm left at the end of this episode like, I hold no hope for coming into the next one, for watching the next one, and being back here in a week's time talking about loving it or hating it or whatever, what they did right, what they did wrong. And not like it matters, you know, if you disagree with me, you're just going to dislike the video anyway. You're not going to talk to me about it. So, Yeah, whatever. And, oh yeah, I'm sure I'll be back. I'll be back. This is a car wreck. Unfolding in slow motion, as far as I'm concerned. A lack of personality in so many of these characters. And then you're gonna put them all in a boat where, you know, they're completely unlikable for going around someone's back who has, you know, been traumatized. You know, you could try to have an intervention with her. You could try to, you know, talk to her. And what are they going to do now? What are they going to do in the aftermath? They're just going to, like, you know, treat her like they're wearing kitty gloves, like, you know, keep the safety scissors away from her and everything. They're going to tiptoe around the tulips. I'll tell you what, I hope she finds out about it and she rips them all new a-holes. Then I will be back here next week going, yeah, damn yeah, hell yeah. So yeah, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Please do comment below if you're so motivated to, telling me why you either love it or hate it and everything in between, whatever issues or non-issues you may have or agreements you may have with everything I said, and maybe or maybe not. Catch you next time. Peace.